Please take a moment to increase the brightness on your device for optimal viewing. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sketchy Friendler, where every day I tell you a story and I draw a picture to go along with it. Today I'm going to tell you about my experience of being in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. All right, so before I really get started, just to let everybody know, I do draw in this blue pencil to begin with, so please bear with me. I will get going into graphite once I'm a little farther along. If you can't see, please crank up the brightness on your viewing device. And if you still can't see, if you're using your cell phone, then just turn the cell phone horizontal so the image fills up your screen. With that, let's get going. So this goes back some time to when I think I was about 15, because it was 1989. And I remember it was in the fall, and it was after school, because I was, like most kids or many kids in the 80s, I was a latchkey kid. So I got home and I was by myself, and I think it was definitely before dinner, so it was like late afternoon, and I was watching, I should have been doing my homework, but I was watching the World Series, because it was an amazing thing to be in the Bay Area at that time, because it was a battle of the Bay, basically, because you had the Oakland A's versus the San Francisco Giants. So that was really cool. So I was watching TV. I should have been doing homework. And, when you're from California, when you grow up in California, earthquakes do not faze you. They're just part of everyday life. You're going to experience many earthquakes that don't amount to anything. Just a little shaking or a bump or a jolt. And pretty much nothing happens. So by the time you're 15 and, you're a kid, so you feel invincible anyway, earthquakes really don't mean much to you. They always say the big one's coming, and it will eventually, but it just never seems to happen. So by the time you get to high school, you kind of don't really take earthquakes very seriously. I mean, you know what to do, and or what they tell you to do, which is to go in the doorway. But I think now they're saying that's not really a good idea. But it's also you just really don't take it seriously. And because of that, usually it'll just be a real quick, like a bump or a jolt that just passes, and it's like, oh, what was that? Oh, earthquake. Oh, okay. And then it's over with, and you don't have to worry about it. I think I can always tell when somebody is not a native to California, because they get all freaked out. And I don't blame you. I mean, if you never experienced it, I would imagine it is kind of unsettling, the earth underneath you moving. The only person that I know that's from the Bay Area that always says, "Did you feel the earthquake that happened?" The only person is my mom. Like, anytime a minor earthquake happens, did you feel, or there's something on the news about it, it's like, "Did you feel there was an earthquake?" No, Mom, I didn't feel it. I know, I give her a hard time. But, that's just what I do, because I'm I'm a horrible person. But this time, this was it was after school. I was watching the game, and I started feeling shaking. Started feeling some shaking. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. It's an earthquake. And then it kept shaking. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then it kept shaking. And now it starts getting a little bit more intense, I guess you could say. And it was definitely, at this point, I was like, okay, that's an earthquake. This is really an earthquake. I start seeing this lampshade start shaking, or this ceiling lamp start shaking, swaying back and forth. There was some decorative plates on a mantle, and they fell off. It was not, and that was when I was like, okay, now I guess this is the time that I'm supposed to get up next to the into the door jamb. They tell you to get into the door jamb. Now they're saying probably not such a good idea because the door can actually slam into your fingers. But it is. I mean, it's probably one of the more sturdy areas. And at that time, I grew up in an apartment building, so I was on the second floor. So that's another thing that's always kind of worrying to me when you're in a building. It's got multiple stories. That is not someplace that you typically want to be. Because, especially if you don't want to be on the first floor, but, I think just in general, like as a Californian, I don't like being in buildings that are more than one story because of that. Like that's my only kind of issue I have with kind of earthquakey type stuff. Like I don't ever want to be in a building that's got multiple stories. And the thing is, a lot of places in California have multiple stories, like even the houses. Here in Florida, not so much. I don't see multi-story buildings, but in California, most houses have multiple stories. So I brace myself in, and I'm seeing things rocking around and shaking, and this is something that doesn't typically happen because usually, like I say, earthquakes are just little tremors. They're over with very quickly, but this thing kept going, and as it kept going, it was like picking up like intensity, and that's what really kind of made me start to worry. I'm not sure. I can't remember if the TV lost power. I don't think it did. As things were falling, I think the TV was still on. And but I do remember when stuff stopped, and I was by myself, so I was totally freaked out. I watched the game, and I watched the announcers were talking about the earthquake, and people were all freaked out and didn't know what to do, or were just kind of confused, and they were like telling people they didn't know what to do, and then you start seeing reports of different parts of San Francisco, and I lived in the suburbs, like outside of San Francisco, across the Golden Gate Bridge, and that point, like my stepmom worked in San Francisco, so I didn't, know what was going on with them. My mom was working in the county that I lived in, so it would be easier for her to get back. But again, this is back in the '80s, so nobody had cell phones. That wasn't like a thing. And if they did, they were like big bulky things. But so yeah, I didn't know where my folks were. So I just sort of hung in tight and just hoped at least that my mom would come home soon. And eventually, she got back. I don't think she got back fairly quickly, I think. Because she was only about 20 minutes drive away. I think my dad was accounted for fairly quickly. I think he got back somehow. But I think my stepmom might have been stuck there for a few hours or for a little while. I'm trying to remember. Again, this is 1989, so. And I talked to a lot of people afterwards, and like one of my friends' dads, one of the things about earthquakes is, yes, many people can be hurt and killed, which is awful, but usually what it amounts to is lots and lots of like property damage and just massive damage to like infrastructure or whatever. And that earthquake, it totally messed up like a lot of the freeway systems. Like there was one part of the freeway called the Cypress structure. It was in Oakland. That thing came down. A whole bunch of people got, unfortunately, perished in that. But it totally changed how the freeways worked in Oakland and the East Bay, because they had to rebuild, and they didn't want to build the same way because it caused too much damage. It caused a lot of damage, and they didn't want to have that happening because they had to really rethink about how to do earthquake safety because a lot of problems were exposed. So one of the good things about being in an area where there's lots of earthquakes is that you're going to have the most safest buildings, or theoretically, or at least the most preventative things are going to happen where they're going to be able to protect you the best in terms of how they build buildings or retrofit buildings that are older. But there was parts of San Francisco that you don't even look the same now. The whole neighborhood's changed because of the way that the freeways work now, because they had to totally rebuild, and they had rebuilt it differently, and they made the freeway exits in different areas, and same with Oakland as well. But one of my friends' dads almost was in that, but somehow he came home earlier that day, so he didn't get caught up in that, thankfully. One of the kids that I know's mom there's a famous video of a car that kind of falls into part of one of the bridges kind of started coming apart, and they had to pull her out of the back window of her car because her car was hanging off into the water. So yeah, it was really scary, and I've never been in any earthquake as big as that. When I lived in Southern California, there seemed to be more earthquakes when I lived in Southern California than when I was up in Northern California. And there were some that kind of made me a little bit nervous, but nothing to the same level as when the earthquake that I was in. But yeah, that's one thing that I don't miss about California is the earthquakes. But I mean, it seems to me that wherever you go in whatever part of the world you're in, they all have some sort of natural disaster. Oops, I'm sorry. Some sort of natural disaster or a season like hurricanes or tsunamis, all sorts of stuff that you don't normally have in other areas. So people always say, well, I would never live in California because of all the earthquakes. It's like, yeah, well, where you live has tornadoes, or where you live has blizzards, or there's always just kind of, it's kind of like pick your poison. I figure the thing about earthquakes is, yes, when the big one hits, it's going to be pretty bad, but there's like a whole long time period where it's not going to happen, and you just can't live your life worrying about what could happen. That's how I feel. No matter where you are, just try to make the best of it. That's what I think anyway. But what do I know? So that is my story about being in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. And hopefully you won't have to be in anything like that, because it was pretty scary. But most of us survived unscathed. Maybe had some property damage. All right. Well, I think that should do it for today. As usual, I just want to thank you guys for spending time with me. And I will be here Monday through Friday, every day, drawing something up for you and telling you a story and drawing you a picture. What is today? What is the date today? Help me. Oh, the 15th. Okay. Here we go. All right, folks. Just so you know, I have merch up on the AMC Princess Anna store. We've got a limited edition digital drawing, which is actually there's a limited edition shirt and tumbler of the drawing I did for the 10,000 followers on Facebook. Thank you drawing that I did. And there's also a digital print that is not limited edition. However, there is a coupon if you watch the video for that is limited. And all that's ending, I think, on the 24th. Other than that, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And on Saturday, we will put a poll up to find out which one of these drawings you would like to see me finish up. And then on Sunday, I will ink and color in that drawing for you guys. So if you want to hang out on a live on Sunday with me, you can watch me finish up whichever drawing I do. And it's Monday, so we're very early into this cycle. So got 4 more drawings coming up that you can choose from. All right, guys, thank you so much. Let me zoom out a little so you can take a look. All right. I hope you have an awesome rest of your Monday, and I'll see you guys soon. Take it easy. Bye.